Wet tires on coastal asphalt, a low hum, distant gulls swallowed by weather. Aiden kept one hand on the wheel, the other on the heater dial. Warm air hissed from the vents, never quite reaching his fingers. Fog crept in like an illness, thick, patient, incurious. The green highway sign he'd been told to watch for flashed through the mist and was gone before he could read it. He slowed down. No one behind him, no one ahead. Only the pale corridor of highway, the sense that the world had narrowed into a tunnel without a ceiling. He hadn't planned to come back, not to Dunrook, not to the coast that had filled his childhood with salt and mildew and the private rules of an unhappy house. But his mother's voicemail, kept, deleted, and recovered twice, had said enough. Aiden, the fog is wrong this year. The phone had lost signal 10 minutes ago. The world shrank again. He rolled the window down. The smell hit him. Wet rope, rusted iron, old nets, diesel, and something else. A sweet note, like boiled milk left too long. He remembered it. He hated that he remembered. A buoy bell tolled somewhere out in the invisible harbor. One note, then silence. He turned onto Wharf Street. The houses still leaned into the same wind, paint scoured to bone, curtains unchanged for decades. A single porch light burned at noon. Against the fog, color itself felt like a lie. The old family duplex appeared when he'd nearly passed it, its roofline a familiar scowl. He parked, let the engine run a moment too long, as if its noise could hold back the air. Then he killed it, and silence flooded in like tide water through a split seam. He stood with the door open, listening. Down the hill, the surf should have been working itself to white. It wasn't. The mist smothered everything. It made the town sound asleep with its mouth open. The front steps took his weight like a tired body taking a secret. He knocked. No answer. He let himself in with the old key he shouldn't have kept. Deadbolt click. Hinge complaint. Floorboards remembering a name. His mother had always hated the smell of bleach. Why did the house reek of it now? Cold crept up his sleeves. The living room was neat in the way of the frightened. Stacks squared, magazines aligned like bricks. A cup turned upside down on a coaster so dust wouldn't touch the rim. Aiden? The voice came from the kitchen, hers but bent, as if spoken through a scarf. She sat at the table, hands around a mug that steamed without scent, smaller than memory. Not thinner, just reduced, as though something had taken a bite from her outline and smoothed it over. Her gray hair was pinned up with a plastic claw that always looked about to break. "You made it," she said. He kissed her temple. It was cold. "You okay?" "Fine," she said quickly. "Fine. Just listen." He waited. At first he heard nothing. Then the nothing deepened. like a well you only realize is deep when the stone you drop never hits bottom. The refrigerator motor tried to start, failed, tried again. "The fog," she said, eyes on the window. "It used to stay on the harbor, creep up the street sometimes. This year it stays. It stays in the house." He wanted to smile gently, the way grown children do, but the words didn't find their place. She glanced toward the hallway and back, as if listening for a child who breaks the quiet when he wakes. "You hear it?" she asked. "Hear what?" "The lullaby." He told himself he was tired, that the drive had thinned his patience, that she just wanted proof he was really there. But the house had its own gravity. You felt it in your teeth. "Mom," he said softly. "What lullaby?" She lifted a finger. "Wait." And it trembled. They sat. They breathed. Somewhere in the plumbing, a thin whistle rose, like breath over glass. He almost laughed, then didn't, because it wasn't the pipes. Not exactly. It came from the walls, measured, patient, like hands that know how to rock. Not melody, a motion that felt like melody, the swing of a cradle you hear in your bones before your ears. Her eyes filled, but didn't spill. "You hear it," she whispered. He didn't answer. She touched his wrist. Her sleeve slid back, showing small crescent dents in her skin, as if a comb had pressed there too long. "Don't go out after dark," she said.
The clinic had called 2 days ago. Your mother fainted at the grocer's. No injury, but someone should check in. The grocer added his version. She stands in the dairy aisle. Listening. Listening to what? Aiden asked. The grocer didn't answer. Now he was here, and the fog turned corners into rumors. He looked out the kitchen window. The porch rail vanished after 3 rungs. You could believe anything was out there if you stared long enough. "Do you sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. "It sings. It wants us to sleep." Her mouth twisted into a shape built of grief and stubbornness. It wants the house to stop resisting. He breathed through his nose. Slow. "What does the doctor say?" "That I'm old and tired," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And that my son will worry anyway." He made tea, used the good bag she saved for guests, the honey that had sugared in the jar. They sat, listened the way you listen at a door when you're afraid whoever's behind it has stopped breathing. A buoy bell again. Closer, then farther, then gone. When the grandfather clock in the corner coughed 1 inch toward life, his mother flinched and gripped his sleeve. "It's not ours," she said. "It's not any of ours." "Mom," he softened his tone. "Have you been eating?" She nodded.
Sleeping? She stared out the window and let the question pass. He stood. I'll check upstairs. Don't, she said quickly, then slowed the word as if guiding it back. Just call Aunt Moira first. She'll tell you what happened to the Paynes. The Paynes moved away years ago. That's what they tell people, she murmured, smoothing the tablecloth in rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like pressing wrinkles from a baby's blanket. He went anyway, because sons go anyway, even after 35. In houses that trained them to obey what isn't explained. The stairs groaned, swollen by the damp. On the landing, the air turned colder, sharp with bleach. A slow drip from the bathroom. Then two, then silence. His old room was smaller. Rooms are always smaller than their memories. He touched the window. Moisture beaded on the glass. Beyond it, only his reflection in gray. He turned to go and saw the cradle. It shouldn't have been there. Plain pine, handmade, worn pale on the rockers. A thrift store thing his mother would have mocked. He froze. The cradle moved. Not much, just enough. He told himself the floor was uneven, that his weight had shifted the boards, that the house had to settle or it forgot itself. He set 2 fingers on the rail. It stopped. He lifted his hand. It moved again. A patient curve forward, slower back. A motion that had nothing to do with him. He looked for the trick, a string, a draft. Nothing. Only air dense as cloth. From below, the faint hum of breath over a bottle's mouth. He swallowed, feeling foolish. Let the cradle rock. Watched it find a rhythm. That same rhythm from the walls. He pulled out his phone by reflex. No signal. He hit voice memos, holding the screen like a relic. He'd listen later, in daylight. It would be nothing. The floor behind him settled differently, as if weight had shifted there too. The air changed shape around his shoulders, the way it does when a larger animal shares its heat. He didn't turn. He didn't know why. He spoke instead, quietly, to the cradle, as if the house would tolerate that better than speaking to whatever listened. Who are you rocking? The question sounded wrong the moment it left his mouth, like he'd helped the fog finish a sentence. When he went back downstairs, his mother stood at the sink, staring into the empty basin, hands braced on porcelain as people brace on railings in storms. He said nothing about the cradle. She said nothing about upstairs. Between them, the silence learned their names. Footsteps on wet pavement. Distant wind hum. Raindrops tapping against a tin awning. Martin walked down the main street, but nothing looked the way he remembered. The houses seemed painted from memory, windows drawn instead of built, doors with no handles, signs that refused to reflect light. He stopped beside a phone booth. The glass was fogged from the inside. He wiped it with his sleeve and saw his own reflection. But behind him, in the reflection, stood someone else. He spun around. No one. His heart thudded, not in his chest, but in his ears. Footsteps again, behind him this time. He turned. Empty street. The fog moved, not drifting, but breathing. With every breath it grew thicker, closer, heavier. At the intersection, he saw a woman, old, in a long coat, no umbrella. She stood still, facing the sea. He walked toward her. "Excuse me," he said. "Do you know where the nearest hotel is?" The woman didn't answer. She turned her head, slowly, painfully, as though the air resisted her. Her eyes were pale and glassy, clouded like frost. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Her voice was dry, like sand in a throat. "I'm looking for a house," he said. "The Caldwell place, Wharf Street, number 19. There are no houses here." "But I was just there." She blinked. "Then you're already too late." A gust of wind. A sign creaks. Martin blinked again, and she was gone. Only footprints remained. More than one set. He pulled out his phone. No signal. The screen flickered, and for a split second, instead of the wallpaper, a face appeared. Female. Wet. Distorted. Water running down her cheeks, as if she were drowning inside the image. He jerked his hand back. The screen went blank, but the droplets stayed. Real water, beating on the glass. A faint bell rings nearby, soft. Shop-sized, not church-sized. He followed the sound. It led to a small building on the corner. Seaview Inn. The light inside flickered, as though someone kept turning the switch off and on. He pushed the door open. The bell rang again. Inside smelled of salt, wet wood, and coffee no one had drunk in years. Behind the counter stood a woman, young, pale. Her hair looked damp, as if she'd stepped out of the rain and never dried. "Do you have a room?" he asked. "For one night." She watched him, too long, then smiled. Her eyes didn't. "Room 6, she said. "Upstairs." "Thank you." She nodded once, then added quietly, "If you hear footsteps outside your door, don't open it, even if it's you." He frowned. "What?" But she had already turned away. He took the key. The staircase creaked like a memory being replayed. The hallway smelled of the ocean and old dust. Room 6. The key resisted the lock. Click. Hinge groan. Door opening. Inside, simple furniture. A bed. A mirror. An old radio. The window looked straight into fog. He sat on the edge of the bed, closed his eyes, and heard it. That same sound from childhood. A lullaby. Wordless. Slow. But now it came from inside the room, as if someone was singing from underneath the bed. Faint static from an old radio
a slow drip into a sink. Gentle breathing of wind. Martin woke to the sound of water, soft, steady, deliberate, as if someone were pouring it drop by drop beside his ear. It wasn't coming from the bathroom. It was coming from under the bed. Drip, drip, drip. He sat up, lowering his feet to the floor. The boards were damp. His toes brushed something cold, smooth, like glass. He leaned down. Under the bed sat a bowl, filled almost to the rim with water. And beneath the surface, something moved, as if someone was whispering under the water. He touched the edge. The surface stilled, then slowly began to rise, not spilling, just lifting, like something beneath it was breathing. He stumbled back, hit the wall. The radio hissed alive. Soft static, rhythmic, like a slow breath. From the noise came a voice, female, calm, almost singing. The sea waits. Don't fear when it calls. He yanked the cord. Silence. But the voice continued. Now not from the radio, from the room itself. He opened the window. Fog poured in, moving like something that knew the way. In it, a figure. A woman in an old dress stood by the shore. Her hair floated as though underwater. She raised one hand and pointed to the sea. The tide breathes, slow, heavy. He blinked and found himself standing barefoot on wet sand. No room, no bed, only the beach under a trembling moon. You hear us now. The waves came closer. With them, voices, hundreds, not screaming, whispering. They didn't speak words, just sounds of breath and grief, the language of people who'd stayed silent too long. He closed his eyes and saw faces, reflected in water, all with closed eyes, all moving their lips. When he opened his eyes again, everything was gone. Only the bowl remained beneath the bed, still full. On the surface, the reflection of the moon and his own face. Only the eyes weren't his. Rain over wooden planks, slow footsteps, a faint bell from somewhere near the harbor. Martin left the inn at dawn. The fog hadn't lifted. It had thickened, heavy as breath. The world felt smaller now, like the air itself had learned to press down. He followed the road that should have led inland, but it didn't. It ended at water. The asphalt simply vanished beneath the sea. He stepped back. His heartbeat sounded too loud, like something was listening. A distant whistle, low and trembling. He knew that sound. That's how his father used to call from the docks. But his father had been dead 15 years. Dad? No answer. Only a shadow shifting in the fog, as if someone stood just beyond sight. He moved closer. Pebbles cracked under his shoes. Then he saw them. Shapes in the water. Not one. Many. Figures stood knee-deep in the tide, all facing the horizon. Their lips moved, but no words came, only breath. They were singing, each to a different rhythm, 1,000 soft notes, a single, endless sigh. Martin took another step. One of the figures turned. A face glimmered through the mist. His own. Sudden roar, wind, splash. He stumbled back, hitting the boards. When he looked again, the shore was empty, only fog. He ran toward town, but the streets had changed. The angles were wrong. Signs bore names he didn't know, and words were scrawled across the walls in wet streaks of salt. Greater than. If you hear us, you already remember. He burst into the inn, but the lobby was gone. No counter, no light, only a long hallway, and at the end, a door. From beneath it leaked seawater, slow dripping. He approached, hand trembling. He knew he shouldn't open it. Then someone spoke his name. Martin. Too familiar, too close. He opened the door. Inside, the ocean. Real, black, shifting without horizon. Above it, faces, dozens, floating like reflections that refuse to fade, all with open eyes, all whispering, "Come home." He screamed, but the voice drowned instantly, and the fog stepped forward and embraced him. The distant roar of surf, the sea breathing through sand. Martin woke on the shore. There was no sun, only a gray shimmer, cold and metallic, like light seen through water. He lay in wet sand, shirt clinging to his skin, hair stiff with salt. He sat up, coughing. What came out wasn't air. Grains of sand spilled from his mouth. He wiped his lips, and the sand trickled between his fingers like ash. A soft whistle of wind, far-off bell of a buoy. The sea stretched before him, perfectly still. No waves, no tide, just a mirror that refused to break. He squinted. What reflected there wasn't the sky. It was moving. Something was walking beneath the water. He rose unsteadily. No footprints behind him, not even his own. He turned toward the town, but the town was gone. Only fog, dense and pale as milk, rising from where streets should have been. He walked the shore for what felt like hours. The light never changed. He found things washed ashore, a shoe, a pair of broken glasses, a child's doll tangled with seaweed instead of hair, all of them soaked in salt and silt.
He picked up the doll. Water poured from its mouth, and softly, barely audible, it whispered, "You were called too." He dropped it. His heart thudded slowly, as if the water inside him had thickened. Wind gust. Cry of a gull, too close, too human. Behind him, footsteps. Slow, heavy. He turned. No one there, but footprints appeared. Fresh, wet, leading both toward and away from him. He closed his eyes, breathed in. The air was thick, salty, like breathing the sea itself. And then he smelled it. Bleach, the same smell as the inn. He opened his eyes. He was standing in his room again. The bed, the mirror, the radio. Only outside the window, not fog. Water. A moving wall of it, pressing against the glass like a living thing. It shifted. And inside it, faces. Dozens. All silent. Deep rumble, like a heartbeat in the ocean floor. He touched the window. The water mirrored him, hand for hand. From within, a silhouette emerged. The same woman, her smile calm, her eyes black and endless. We're home. The glass trembled, then cracked. Water began to leak through the seams, slow at first, then faster, dripping. A low hum. The walls began to sweat. The ceiling darkened. Then, the first drop fell. Then another. Then hundreds. Rain poured inside the room. Not from above, from the walls themselves. He fell to his knees, water to his ankles, to his knees, to his chest. Don't fight it. The voices surrounded him. All the ones from the pier. All the whispers he had heard in his sleep. They were everywhere. And inside. When the water reached his mouth, he gasped and tasted salt and ash. He stopped breathing, then realized he was breathing, but not air. The sea. Low humming water, like a current moving through metal pipes. Deep pulse beneath it. He opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was light. Not sunlight, a cold liquid green glow, as if the day itself lived underwater. He lay on a street, the asphalt beneath him slick with silt. Seaweed clung to walls, and through shattered windows fish drifted like ghosts. Groan of pressure, the sound of metal bending. Martin rose, breathed, and realized he could. The air was wet, thick, salty, each breath a slow tide moving through him. The town surrounded him, familiar yet wrong. Same houses, same corners, but everything moved, gently, as though suspended in water. He was beneath it now. Figures stood frozen across the square. Not many, silhouettes unmoving, their faces tilted upward, as if waiting for light that would never reach this depth. He walked closer. Tiny bubbles shimmered across one woman's skin. He reached out. She wasn't a statue. She was human. Eyes open, lips parted. Inside her, nothing but the shimmer of water. He moved on. Silence pressed around him, heavy and soft. Each step echoed long and deep, as if sound itself struggled to survive here. On the wall beside him, words were scrawled in white salt. Those who hear the sea no longer live on land. A faint giggle, childlike, distant, muffled through water. He turned. No one. Only bubbles rising from a crack in the pavement. From them came a voice. Home. He followed it, down the street, to the pier that should have ended above water. Now it led into open blue. There, a small boat. Inside it, a glow. Soft, pulsing, like breath in the dark. He stepped in. The boat began to drift on its own. Gentle splash, oars moving without hands. Behind him, the drowned city fell away. Ahead, light, shifting through the current like a heartbeat. He dipped his fingers into the water. They came up covered in gray dust, ash mixed with salt. He leaned over the side and saw his reflection. At first, his own face. Then, another, a woman's, hair floating around her head, eyes endless and black. She smiled, and though no sound reached him, he understood. You stayed. The others went above, and he knew the truth. No one had disappeared. Everyone who heard the call had simply returned. The boat slowed. Before him spread a valley of drowned streets. Lights shimmered beneath the surface, like stars that had forgotten which way was up. Dust drifted through the water. Not dust, ash. The ash of the tide. A deep groan, like the ocean sighing from its core. He closed his eyes, heard the lullaby again, the one without words. Now he knew who sang it. They, the ones beneath, the ones who stayed. The boat stopped at a house. His house. Its windows glowed softly. Inside, a woman's silhouette, cradling something small. When she looked up, he saw his own face. Martin, the sea is waiting. It wants you to stop waking up. Deep splash, the last breath before sinking. Water closed over the boat. The light vanished. Silence returned, and the city slept once more. Deep underwater hum, slow echo like a heartbeat through miles of water. Silence lay over everything, thick, absolute, like the weight of the ocean itself. Martin opened his eyes. He was standing on the shore again, but the sand glowed faintly, as if it held trapped starlight beneath its surface. Far beyond, the city rose from the mist. Dunrook,
reborn in reflection. The buildings hung upside down above the horizon, their windows shimmering like ripples on glass. A soft, metallic chime, the sound of submerged chains stirring. Then he heard it, the singing, low, layered voices drifting up from the water. Men, women, children, all in unison, one endless breath. You remember us now. He stepped forward. The water met him gently, warm and pulsing, moving in rhythm with his heart. Every drop seemed to whisper his name. A figure formed from the fog, a woman in gray, her face pale, almost luminous. He recognized her, from the pier, from the reflection, from the sea. "Who are you?" he asked. "I'm what remains," she said. "What remains of what?" "Of everyone who listened." Distant wind, a soft, rhythmic thud, like a pulse through a shell. She reached out her hand. Patterns ran along her skin. Thin lines, carved by salt. "We are not dead," she said. "We only returned." Martin looked to the waves, and in every swell he saw faces. A boy, a woman, an old man. His own. "We are the ash of the tide." He touched the surface. It moved like breath beneath his fingers. From below rose bubbles, each one whispering a name, the names of those the city had called. And then he understood. He had never left Dunrook. He had drowned 15 years ago, the same day the sea took his father. But the memory of him remained, and now that the fog had returned, it had come to collect what was left. Dull splash, rising surf. He took one more step. The water reached his chest, then his throat. The sea spoke in his own voice. "Come home." He smiled, faintly, as if remembering a lullaby, and walked forward. The ocean folded over him like a curtain. No struggle, no air, only warmth. Above the surface, a single plume of gray dust drifted upward, ash mingled with salt, then scattered in the wind. Crackle of an old radio. Somewhere, on a forgotten pier, a dusty radio flickered to life. Through static came a distorted voice. Martin Caldwell, returned by the sea. And as the last word faded, the city of Dunrook exhaled, inhaled, and vanished back into the mist.